Hello and welcome to Fascism on Film. I'm James Kent. With me, as always, is Teal Minton. You can find us on fascismonfilm.com, Apple Podcasts, or other podcast areas. You found us somehow. Here we are, taking this fun journey together. This is season 3. Say hello, Teal, to the kids.
Hello. I like how you describe this as a fun journey.
It's a fun journey, yeah.
There's nothing, when I think fascism, I think fun.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, just having a little lighthearted humor. Well, they can't all be as fun as watching Melania. So
that's true. Yeah, there are some comedies we've talked about, so there definitely is some fun along the way.
Yes, and the film that we're going to talk about today, at first, might seem like an odd choice for Fascism on Film. It certainly is a unique movie in that regard, but I think that while I wouldn't say necessarily fascism, I would definitely think that when we look at America and we think of authoritarianism, and some of the things that we might have been hearing about in the news in the past year or so, there's a lot to be said for the film that we're going to talk about today, which is 1976's Network, directed by Sidney Lumet and written by Paddy Chayefsky and starring William Holden and Faye Dunaway and a whole cast of people that are in there. Beatrice Straight, who holds the record for the shortest amount of time on screen for winning an Oscar for supporting actress. Faye Dunaway also won for Best Actress. And then for Best Actor, Peter Finch, who passed away a couple of months before the Academy Awards came out. And I don't know if he had lived, whether or not would he have won the award or not. I don't know. So interesting. That remains to be seen because he's the one who won. But it's a film that has been a long favorite of Teal's.
Yeah, longtime favorite of mine, in part because the screenplay is just so incredibly tightly put together. Every line of dialogue feels powerful and meaningful. It's a script with nothing out of place. It just works perfectly, but at the same time, on its own terms, it's not necessarily like a typical 3-act structure kind of Hollywood movie. It really it lets its characters drive the story, and it is a satire. We should, point out that this is intended to be a comedic film, and it is, or dark comedy anyway. It is very dark at times, but it has a lot of humor in it.
It is definitely a satire. It's adult satire. So, when I first saw the film, probably on VHS in the early 80s, I probably didn't have the level of understanding, especially being like just a young teenager, but I didn't think it was a very good movie. Quite honestly, I didn't get it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it just took me a little bit. But it's a film that you come back to again and again. And this is the interesting thing about a movie like Network. It is a movie that satirizes 1976 television, that industry.
Yes.
And what was going on at the time and where they thought it was kind of headed to. It has a lot of kind of negative things to say, I think, about the television industry.
Yeah, the television industry and the culture at large, I think, that feeds on that type of programming, that responds to it, that gets mobilized by it, that sort of has an emotional reaction to television.
But here's what's amazing about a movie like Network, and why it's one of the greatest films of all time. I'm going to say it right there. I actually think it's one of the greatest films, certainly one of the greatest American films that's ever come out, is because you put this on in different time periods over the years, and you get new things out of it. New revelations, new predictions that this movie made that seemed almost absurd. So the satire part of the movie was way more satirical in 1976 because it seemed ridiculous. It was supposed to be ridiculous to some degree. And yet it predicted so much of what was going to happen with television, with the media, and this country. And then I rewatched this film about a month ago, maybe even less. And it was another eye-opener because there were certain things that happened in the movie that I probably felt was a little bit more of the background machinations happening, but they
Right.
suddenly came to the forefront based on stuff that has gone on in the country with television stations and the control of big multinational conglomerates on content and control
Yes.
of the news that are shocking, quite honestly, when you watch a film like this today.
It is shocking, and it blurs the line between entertainment and news, or rather, the Faye Dunaway character turns the news into entertainment, and that's something that basically in the last 50 years since this film came out, that has happened more and more and more. This kind of, I think we even have a word for it now, infotainment. And it's the idea that we're supposed to get it triggers us more emotionally than just giving us information. It's sort of like Walter Cronkite just gave us information. This gives us I don't know. I mean, it would be really interesting to see what Paddy Chayefsky would have to say about social media and how the internet has changed this, everyone famous for 15 minutes kind of thing, and sort of how these passions are out there and manipulated by the media. And we're in a country right now where we're in essentially two separate media spheres, and whichever one you're tuning into, you think is reality, and you think the other one is fake.
Yeah, and well, obviously, after the 70s and the 80s, with the introduction of CNN, that was the start of 24-hour news, which we
Yes.
didn't have in the country before. And then, of course, with Fox News, a very, very specific political agenda after the Fairness Doctrine was eliminated in
Yeah.
1987. So the movie, I guess, for those who've seen it, I suggest it's time for a rewatch.
Yes.
For those who haven't seen it, well, it's time for a watch of this movie because the things that you're going to watch in this film, you might be like, how did they know? Because it's so relevant. I remember seeing this film in about early 90s and thinking that it was good, but maybe a little silly and dated. I honestly felt that.
Right.
And then it wasn't too long afterwards, like several years later, seeing it again and with fresh eyes, like, wow, this is a brilliant
Yeah.
movie. And now to watch it, to me, it's just shocking because it was 1976, and you have the big major networks, and this is a fake network, which I
Yeah.
found out.
UBS.
I found out from my wife. I didn't realize this because I don't watch it. There is a program that she watches. I don't know, is it on Apple TV or whatever? And has Jennifer Aniston in it. The Newsroom, is that what it's called or something?
I don't know.
The reason I'm bringing it up, Teal, and we can cut some of this out, is that they use that's the network.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they use that as in the network in that. So there's like definitely a reference, but so they're one of like, I guess they're like, I guess it's in this world, it's a big four, which is funny because this is before Fox
Yeah.
channel came on and it was like the fourth big network. But, the news was the trusted, very most important. It may not have been the most brought in the most revenue, but it was
Yeah.
important for networks to have for you to tune into their station for the news. And this is a channel that is kind of like a Fox channel,
Mhm.
not Fox News, but the Fox, the entertainment channel there,
Yeah.
is that they're the lowest in the ratings. And the start of the film, their newscaster, Howard Beale, has kind of a nervous breakdown on TV and says that he's going to kill himself on live television. And while he's saying this, nobody's really paying attention in the
In the
engineer's booth. They're
Yeah.
like not even paying attention to him. And suddenly it's like, wait a minute. They're starting to hear some phone rings, and they're like, "Wait a minute! Did Howard just say he's
Wait.
going to kill himself on TV?" And that starts the whole thing where we never sure they don't really ever say. It's kind of clear to me anyway that what probably happened is that Howard Beale had a brain tumor was affecting
Oh, you
him.
think?
That's what I think.
I just thought it was a nervous breakdown.
I
But
think I think that what happens was, why he's having those fainting fits later and stuff. And I think he's got a brain tumor. And my wife thought he had a brain tumor as well.
Interesting, because he does kind of fly off into this religious zone that's not just the political and not just the I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take
Yeah,
it.
as I think he's got his brain cancer.
Okay.
Well,
Okay. He's got
well,
a tumor. Okay.
but you know what? In the genius of Paddy Chayefsky, he doesn't explain it.
No, it's not explained.
Yeah, he doesn't give you answers, but essentially, while they're trying to figure out what to do with this guy, and his longtime friend we grew up with in news together is William Holden, right?
Yeah.
And he's a guy who, he's toward the later part of his career, at least in this industry, and the studio suits are kind of wanting to clean house and change things up, and get something new going. And so they just are out for blood, and he's trying to save his friend's career, his own career. And then simultaneously, there's this young executive in programming, and she sees an opportunity. That's Faye Dunaway. She sees an
Yeah.
opportunity of like, wait a second, I think we can take this and turn it into some ratings, because people are clearly interested in the human interest aspect of this guy losing his marbles on television. And of course, her ideas win out. And then suddenly this guy becomes some kind of wacky prophet of the airwaves.
Well, yeah, he's a wacky prophet of the airwaves, but he is like expressing some genuine grievance that people tap into about how they feel left behind by the world, and they're being ground down by capitalism, and they're angry about how they're not being represented. And so he does tap into some genuine, authentic outrage. And I think that it's that this is what Paxton talks about as mobilizing passions for fascism. And I'm not saying that Howard Beale is a fascist, but he's tapping into some of those same things that fascism taps into, which is that outrage. And then where is it directed? And Howard Beale doesn't really direct it in any meaningful place, or in any meaningful area for quite a while. It's just go to your window and scream your outrage.
Well, he's talking for a while, but already people are kind of tuning out,
Yes.
and he disappears for a little bit, and they don't know what's happening to him. They think, all right, we've had enough of this guy. He's going to be fired, and William Holden's getting fired. The networks, they're all trying to they're trying to please their stockholders. And that's something I
Yes.
don't think I ever really paid much attention to that part of the story as much. Because you have, now the late, great Robert Duvall. He's one of
Yeah.
these network suits that he just sees dollar signs and how much that he can report to the stockholders. And
Yeah.
everything's dollars and cents to him. He really could care less about the news unless it's going to be profitable. That's why he's interested in Faye Dunaway. But
Yeah.
then, in what's become the most famous moment, I think, of the movie, and anybody who hasn't even seen it knows this, is it's like a super stormy night. And Howard Beale comes in out of the rain. He disappeared. He like he was sleeping at William Holden's house,
Yeah.
and he disappeared for there. So he's been gone for a couple of days, and he just shows up and walks in the studio in his raincoat. And that's when he says, he's mad as hell and he's not going to take it anymore. And he gets America to basically, scream and shout out their windows that they're mad as hell. What I think you were talking about, which is very much on that sort of fascist authoritarian bend, is the populist.
Yes.
He has basically become a populist, where he is channeling all the anger that people have because there was the gas crisis going on.
Yeah.
We were a failure in Vietnam. There wasn't a lot of sense that the country was going in the right direction. We had the whole Nixon Watergate, which was a really big shock to the country.
Yeah.
He's taking this anger and, saying like he's mad as hell and he's not going to take it anymore. I think the thing you're saying is that there's no direction to what the solution is.
Exactly. There's no solution at all. It's just express anger and rage and without taking a meaningful action. Later in the film, he does inspire people to meaningful action, which is to send telegrams and call their congressman and try to stop this corporate merger.
In the swell of this sort of new popularity he has, Faye Dunaway starts to basically, she invents reality television in a way. There's
Yes.
a group of militant left-wingers
The Ecumenical Liberation Army.
Yes, which is like it's a thinly guised group like the people who kidnapped Patty Hearst, and
Yeah.
they satirize that whole thing. But the funny thing is that she's got someone on the inside that's like taking footage of their crimes, and her whole idea is to package that up into a show where she bets America will tune in every week to see them commit crimes.
Yeah. Well, and not just crimes, but terrorist activity. They are a terrorist group.
You can buy it today that this is what producers are like, they're sharks. They'll do anything to get ratings.
Yeah.
And she packages up all this crazy stuff and then this new Howard Beale news hour. And they've got stuff like Sybil the Soothsayer.
Yes. They have a psychic.
They have Vox Populi, which I think is just the most hilarious title for a show. The voice of the people. And there's like another guy. I can't remember what his character does, but there's, it's so sensationalized. Basically, she has sensationalized the news, and suddenly they become the number one news network.
Yeah, because they're basically just answering people's grievances and amplifying them, and it is populist, and it's not just giving you the news. And the William Holden character sort of represents the old school integrity of the news, report the facts kind of thing. And this is really playing on the Howard Beale show is sort of playing on people's emotions much more and entertaining them. It's a little bit of a bread and circus, but it's taking sort of serious things like terrorism. It takes this terrorist group that is ultimately leading to death and violence, and it turns that into an entertainment. And so it's sort of this almost a bread and circus kind of move.
You had mentioned a couple minutes ago, there's this merger that's going to happen.
Yes.
This is where today, what's been going on today, where you have these big power players. Like we think of, the Paramount, they had their merger first with what? What was the one that they
Warner
had?
Brothers?
No, before that, they had one that went through that the Trump administration did. And in order to do that, they axed Colbert.
Right.
And to appease him. And then they got their merger through. And then, of course, they want to buy Warner Brothers next. And there's some strong arming and muscling and things that in the past would never be allowed are being allowed. What was fascinating is, and it really parallels things in network, is they install in their Paramount, which is now owned CBS, their newsroom, they put in a partisan right-wing hack.
Yeah.
Barry Weiss.
Yeah.
Basically designed to decimate the news and force probably people to not watch their news anymore, to lower their ratings. And what's so shocking is when you watch network again, a very similar thing happens, is that Howard Beale, his popularity, anything like that goes through a popularity phase and then it starts to wane. And then he does what you said. He has everybody write to the White House that they're against this merger. But now he is smiting his own company.
Yes.
And the powers that be, the head of the entire network.
Not just the head of the network, the head of the multinational corporation that has absorbed the network.
Right. And that's played by Ned Beatty.
Yeah.
And he calls in Howard Beale, one of the most famous scenes in the movie.
Well, and one of the best scenes in cinema history, in my opinion. It's so well written, and Sidney Lumet does such an amazing job of getting this sort of almost religious feeling across in the set design and the lighting.
Yeah, the cinematography is amazing as well.
Owen Roizman.
Yeah, and he was nominated for an Oscar for this. Basically, again, Howard Beale, who, whether it's a brain tumor or he's just mentally checked out, Ned Beatty's character convinces Howard Beale that he needs to support the network and that multinationalism is great and it's good. And all the things that he's been rallying against, he basically convinces Howard Beale to go on the air and tell the people the opposite. That's what was reminding me very much of Barry Weiss, is at the cost of any rating, toe a party line and essentially destroy all of what CBS has stood for like 70 years.
Almost 100.
Almost 100, right. I'm thinking more on their broadcast for their television, but yes, almost 100 years.
But they were radio news before that.
Yeah. Well, they're not radio anymore. She
No,
took that
not
off.
radio anymore.
And so what they're doing is they suddenly are controlling as a puppet master what the mouthpiece is going to say. But you know what? Immediately America rejects it. And so his ratings crash and tumble, and they want to now get rid of Howard Beale for good. This is the people at the front of the network and Faye Dunaway, et cetera. And they can't because the head of the conglomerate refuses. He doesn't care about the ratings. He just cares that that message goes out. And it's so much like what's been happening today. And it starts to really make your head go bonkers because, you know, we think about what's happened in the past year and a half and we think, oh, it's so bad. But then I start to think about, well, most of these people were in control before that. And you start to think about the last election and how even the last administration, Biden got the worst press coverage on this guy that they've never once done for Donald Trump. And you have the newspapers refusing to endorse Kamala Harris. And now you're realizing that these people have been controlling a certain message for a very long time. And now it's just, of course, gotten worse in the past year and a half. But ultimately, you're seeing the seeds of this with this 1976 movie, which is almost 50 years old. No, it is 50 years old this year.
It is 50 years old. Yeah.
It's incredible that this movie predicted where we were going. And then ultimately, and I don't know, I don't think this is a film or this is a show where we're worried about spoilers of a 50-year-old movie, but
no, I don't think so. I think we can spoil it.
This is where, again, this is satire, but it's very devious. These people have no scruples or morals at all, especially Faye Dunaway's character. You know, someone I think says, well, we could kill him. And then she's like, kind of like, hey, that's a good idea. And she could make ratings out of this by getting this to be the next crime of the terrorist group that she's got under her wing, and they can photograph and film it all. And so essentially, Howard Beale starts the movie off saying he wants to kill himself on live television. And then at the end of the movie, he is executed on live television.
Yeah, it's like his own outrage has been taken and commodified and redirected back at him. It's sort of like if instead of canceling Colbert or firing Colbert, they said, you have to have this specific message. And Colbert completely changes his programming and starts criticizing other things, ratings drop, and then they kill him because that's the only way to that's the only way to get rid of him. And and I think that the Ned Beatty character really is just trying to get his message out there the way that these billionaires are through the media that they own and control. And we're seeing this more and more with, you know, like Larry Ellison and Paramount and Warner Brothers and all these news divisions. And we've seen CNN become more right-wing over the last few years.
They're basically being run by another billionaire that's cozy with this administration too. Like it's nonstop.
Yeah, and so you see that, like, how, in part, I think this film is a critique of capitalism, right? And how it takes this genuine anger and commodifies it and turns it around and chews people up and takes their genuine emotions and sort of bastardizes them. And so I think there is a critique of capitalism, but what's interesting is that Ned Beatty's speech to Howard Beale is basically full-on globalist vision, which is that there are no countries, there's no borders, there's only money flowing around in the world and through corporations, and that is the natural order of the universe, is global capitalism, and that's how nature works, and that Howard Beale has messed with, I think the line is like, you've messed with the primordial structure of the universe or something like that.
Yeah, and he speaks it as if he is like God Almighty saying this to him.
Yes. Oh, yeah. He knows how to get through to Beale, and he does it in very. And he does say, "Am I getting through to you, Mr. Beale?" And he stops for a second, and then he keeps going. But he has clearly prepared this speech in a way that he knows will get through and change Howard Beale, and Beale becomes then just sort of a pawn in this capitalist thing. And one thing I was thinking about in terms of fascism is, you know, what Beale taps into potential. is a real rebellion against this global world order that Beatty's talking about, but it could also turn into fascism. And so it started me thinking is, what Beatty is describing is sort of a post-political world in which everything is money. And it seems to me that that is what Paxton calls the fertile ground, or the soil in which fascism grows. And it can be that popular anger that Beale taps into. It could become fascism, but also nationalism can take root really easily in that sort of global capitalist environment. And so it sort of, I think, is creating the conditions in which fascism can rise up and take hold. And if Beale was a fascist, he could have directed that rage in that direction. And so now we see other populist figures tapping into that same rage, and I'm talking about Trump, of course, tapping into that same genuine rage of feeling left behind by capitalism, and tapping into that and turning it into an authoritarian nationalist movement that's also pro-corporate and pro-billionaire.
There's like part of the big lie, right? He's got this group that keeps him, I guess, in power because he's so popular, but then his actions go against everything he was telling his supporters about. I mean, no more wars, yet now we are the Department of War, and we have started a war that costs $1 billion a day in Iran with no cause, and now he forces his supporters to support that. There's so many different examples in the past, but like with the Epstein files, right? He has these people fully believing this corruption and child predators, but then the reality is it's him and all his buddies are the child predators, and now these same people have to go on and support that. It's such a strange thing. Well, meanwhile, he's America first, and yet he's making billions through globalization, but for the billionaire class only.
Exactly. Yeah. And everyone else is getting left behind, and that it is authentic, that anger and that outrage they feel is authentic. It's just we have sort of the demagogue redirecting it away from the actual cause of that disaffection.
Yeah. I mean, when we had so little money that we had to cut all of these federal programs, et cetera, you and I knew what was happening, what the reality was. But then to throw in your faces after that, we suddenly have billions of dollars that are, I guess they're all taxpayer dollars, to go to war. There's no financial benefit for your common man. It's all going to, I guess, the military industrial complex that gets the $1 billion a day.
Exactly. Yeah. And I guess, some of that does sort of go into maintaining our economy, but it's that same sort of thing where it's just in the interest of the global financial order more than the working man.
Yeah.
And Beale does tap into the working man rage in a way that's similar to what Trump does. It's just Trump has turned it into authoritarianism, and Beale doesn't really get the chance to turn it into anything more than just sort of empty outrage.
Well, see, the network, once they saw the power of where, like you said, he really didn't have any solutions or to be able to channel it into action other than like let out your rage. But as soon as he decided that this corporate merger was not good, and he was able to get people to send letters to the White House and potentially change opinion, that's when he became dangerous to the establishment up the corporate ladder. Up to, they're like, wait a minute, this guy could change and could ruin our plans financially. So we've got to do something. And then, of course, they do something that appeases them. But then the lower ranking network people realize that he's not good for their jobs and their bottom lines. So he's got to go. And if they won't let him go, then we're going to have to kill him.
and they do. And they do. And so I think the film ultimately is a tragedy because the world that Ned Beatty is describing, this vast ecumenical holding company or whatever he calls it, but this vast global corporation continues to exist, continues to thrive, and Beale is just sort of a disposable part of it and doesn't really hold genuine meaning or genuine outrage and is just commodified and discarded.
Yeah, so I mean, this is a film where if you haven't checked it out, you should. And if you haven't checked it out in a long time, take another look. Again, it's not your traditional fascism on film, but I think there's a lot of interesting things to look at with fresh eyes, especially in the light of today's history. So this is my recommendation, is to check this movie out.
Well, and it does really explore sort of the preconditions for fascism and how those have been part of our culture for the last 50 years, really, since this film pointed this out, that those preconditions of that outrage, of that disenfranchisement, of that desire to break out of the system, those sorts of things, and feeling left behind by the system, those preconditions for fascism are explored in this. It's not just about television. It's not just about capitalism. It's showing how a culture can lead to, like a Huey Long type character or Father Coughlin or somebody like that, who are these sort of fascist populist leaders who dress themselves up in Americana.
Well, I think that's why it's interesting and important to take a look when people say, how did we get here?
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying, well, you watch Network and you'll understand, but I think through film, which is what we're focused on here on Fascism on Film, you can look at a movie like this that is 50 years old and notice that, like you said, that fertile ground, that there's something there. Maybe it took 50 years to get to the point we're at now, but there were things happening in America that if you looked carefully, you could see the road that was going to happen. And
exactly.
I think that what a lot of us didn't see is how technology was going to play that role. I think when I was growing up and thinking of technology advances, I couldn't quite predict, like even with the smartphone, I don't know if I could see at the time how that was going to play such a significant role in what's happened today, and how controlling it has been for social media.
I do sort of see yelling out the window when he has people go to the window and say, I'm mad as hell, I'm not going to take it anymore. That is similar to going on social media. It's just yelling out into the echo chamber. And so I think that if the movie was made today, people would just be posting, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. And that just sort of gets absorbed by the culture and doesn't really land on anything.
Yeah, I mean, it shows you the instantaneous nature of, here, this is a message that came off the live television. It hit millions of people, and that created a movement. And so social media can reach millions all at once.
Yes.
But of course, it disappears very fast on social media. Like the staying power of news today is such a short shelf life.
It's such a short, it's forgotten so quickly. News cycles are measured in hours, not days and weeks.
I mean, I would even say that events like No Kings, we've had a third one, and the first one and the second one, maybe had news for several days. I feel like this third one pretty quickly starts to get back into the minds. And that's just the nature of our society today.
Yeah, and the nature of our media landscape, which is what this film is really addressing.
So this was an interesting film to examine. Again, on season 3, we have a lot of interesting films coming up. We're not this season. We're not announcing what the next movie is. I think we're kind of leaving that to you waiting and seeing what is coming up next. I can tell you some of the movies that we're going to look at this season. Films like Sophie Scholl, The Final Days. That will be something we're going to look at.
Jojo Rabbit, which is another film I think a lot of people have reached out to us in conversations saying, hey, you haven't done that Jojo Rabbit. And there's definitely some things to talk about with that film. And we got a whole lot other movies. So again, if you feel like there's a film that you're desperate for us to cover and we haven't yet, you can certainly reach out to us at fascismonfilm.com and send us a message there. We'll get it. And we'd love to hear from you. And certainly try to take a look. Sometimes, there's a movies maybe that we haven't seen, and that's always exciting. A lot of these films we have seen. So anyways, that's all I got for today. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Again, this is James Kent, and with me is Teal Minton, and we appreciate you taking the time to listen.
Goodbye.
I always like to hear you say goodbye at the end. It's always like, to me, that's when the episode's over.